In basketball, composure is currency. The best players in the world learn early how to absorb contact, swallow frustration, and keep moving. But there are limits to what any competitor can take before the body starts speaking louder than the mind. Caitlyn Clark knows those limits better than almost anyone playing the game right now. When the whistles go quiet and the hits keep coming, something shifts in her expression. A tightening around the jaw, a flash in the eyes, a sharpness in the way she plants her feet. She doesn't hide it. She never has. And those moments, the ones where everything she's carrying rises to the surface, are the moments that define what kind of competitor she truly is. What follows are the times Caitlyn Clark was pushed to her absolute edge. Every single one of them hits harder than the one before it. And it started the way these things often do, not with a single dramatic incident, but with something smaller, something that set the tone for everything that followed. On January 10th, 2024, in a Big Ten matchup against the Purdue Boilermakers, Clark arrived at the court with the kind of locked-in energy that her opponents had already learned to fear. You could read it in her warm-up, in the way she tracked movement at both ends of the floor even before the opening tip. There was an intention to her presence that the building could feel. But within the first few minutes of play, before she had even fully settled into her rhythm, her teammate Kylie Furback was shoved. Hard. In clear view of the officials standing no more than 10 feet away. Nothing. No whistle, no call, no acknowledgement that anything had happened. Clark's response was immediate and unfiltered. She turned toward the nearest official and let him hear exactly what she thought about the non-call, her voice carrying the accumulated weight of a player who had learned not to expect anything easy. Technical foul. Clark, number 22. Instead of the foul she was demanding for her teammate, she received a technical of her own. No warning. No opportunity to walk it back. Just a penalty for the crime of reacting to something that should have been obvious to anyone watching. The message sent by that whistle was unmistakable. She would be held to a standard that didn't account for what she was actually responding to, and she had barely gotten started. What made it worse was understanding that this wasn't a one-game aberration. It was a preview, yet the pattern announced itself clearly just weeks later. On March 23, 2024, with Iowa facing Holy Cross in a tournament setting, Clark made the kind of play she makes instinctively. Reading a passing lane, attacking the ball before the offense could react, coming away with a clean steal that should have led to an easy transition opportunity. Instead, by the time she crossed half court with the ball, 3 defenders had converged on her simultaneously. Not 2, 3. They used their bodies to crowd her space, cutting off every angle, making it physically impossible to advance without contact. And yet, for the officials working that game, none of what was happening constituted a foul. Triple teamed. No call. Clark did what she always does. She tried to create something anyway. The ball came loose in the chaos. The play broke down. And the frustration of being swarmed without protection finally surfaced in a way that couldn't be missed. She bounced the ball hard off the back of her own head, a gesture that communicated everything words couldn't in that moment. Players on the Iowa bench were audible, calling for a technical that wasn't coming. What was becoming clear, game by game and call by call, was that Caitlyn Clark was going to have to handle a level of physicality that the whistle simply wasn't going to manage for her. That understanding didn't break her, it hardened her. But that hardness would only be tested more severely once she left the college game behind. The transition from college to professional basketball brought with it a change in setting, in competition level, and in the nature of the pressure being applied. What didn't change was the pattern. On July 17, 2024, playing for the Indiana Fever against the Dallas Wings with the clock draining in the final minute, Clark found herself in the kind of situation that separates players who buckle from those who dig in. Down to under 45 seconds, she pushed the ball up the floor as the only Fever player in motion. Her teammates were still recovering their positions. She was alone. The Wings recognized the isolation immediately and sent 3 defenders to meet her, collapsing the lane before she could establish any angle of attack. No foul came. Clark works the angle, stripped. The ball was taken away and the possession was gone. In the immediate aftermath, Clark walked toward the fever bench, reached for a water bottle sitting at the scorer's table, and launched it with a force that left no room for interpretation about what she was feeling. The bottle skidded across the hardwood. The arena noticed. The broadcast caught it. And for a moment, the composed, professional version of Caitlyn Clark that she worked so hard to maintain had given way entirely to something raw and honest. It was the frustration of a player who had been asked once again to create something from nothing while the officials watched the contact happen without intervening. She collected herself. She went back to work. But what that moment made visible was real, and the people who had been watching all season recognized exactly what they were seeing. This wasn't just about one team or one group of officials failing to protect her. It was bigger than that, and it had been building for months. The incidents weren't random. They were consistent. The type of physical treatment Clark was absorbing, the contact on drives, the grabs at her arms, the body checks on the perimeter, was being permitted at a level that would have produced whistles for other players in similar situations. The accumulation was the point. Every call that didn't come added weight to the next moment. Every non-call sent the same message. Absorb it and keep going. She did. But she was absorbing more than anyone should have been asked to carry. On February 25th, 2024, in a crucial late-season game against Ohio State, Clark ran into an opponent who seemed to understand exactly what the officials were permitting. Buckeye guard J.C. Sheldon grabbed Clark's left hand during a possession. Not incidentally, not as a byproduct of going for the ball, but deliberately, marked with a grip that stopped Clark's movement mid-play. Sheldon with the grab. Nothing called. Before Clark could respond to that contact, a second foul followed in the same sequence. Back to back, both in full view of the official's position to make the call. Both ignored. The crowd around her reacted. Her own bench reacted. Clark herself said nothing in that moment. Her face communicated everything that words would have been redundant to express. The toll of playing through that kind of treatment, of getting hit twice on the same play and hearing nothing from the whistle, registers somewhere deeper than anger. It sits in the body. It accumulates. And when it finally comes out, it comes out with the force of everything that has been held back until that point. What happened on June 1st? On 2024 was different in character from what had come before. This wasn't a missed call or a non-contact foul that officials chose to ignore. This was something more direct. During a WNBA game between the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky, Angel Reese, who had made clear through her body language and prior encounters that she brought something extra whenever Clark was the opponent, drove an elbow and forearm into Clark's body on a rebound sequence and sent her to the floor. Clark goes down, no call. The contact wasn't ambiguous. The intent behind it was readable to anyone watching in real time, even if the camera angles made it easier to frame as incidental after the fact. The officials let it go entirely. Reese followed it up with taunting directed at Clark, and holding eye contact and gesturing in a way that made the interaction feel less like basketball and more like a message being delivered. Clark got up. She didn't engage. She didn't gesture back. She walked to the other end of the floor and kept playing, responding the only way that actually matters, with the next possession and the one after that. But fans watching from every angle of that arena and every screen broadcasting the game understood what had just been permitted to happen. And the conversation it started didn't end when the final buzzer sounded. The officials themselves became the story on a night that should have belonged entirely to Clark's skill. Might on a January evening against Purdue, the same matchup that had already produced a technical foul against her for demanding accountability, Clark caught fire in the second half and delivered one of the rarest plays in the sport. From well beyond the half-court line, with time expiring on the shot clock, she released a heave that traveled the length of half the court and dropped cleanly through the net. Clark from half court, it's good. The kind of shot that has a less than 1% chance of going in under any conditions, made in a game situation with the clock forcing her hand. It should have counted. Instead, the official nearest the play had called a foul on Clark before the ball left her hand, nullifying the basket entirely. Clark was already in her follow-through motion, body fully committed to the release, like when the whistle came. The call erased one of the most remarkable individual moments of her entire season. She stood at the spot where she had released the ball and let the officials know exactly what she thought about the timing of that decision. And Clark is livid. Nobody in the building had any difficulty understanding her reaction. The question that didn't have a comfortable answer was whether that call would have been made with the same timing against a different player. By May 20th, 2024, the relationship between Clark and the officiating crews had become one of the defining storylines of the Fever's season. In a road game against the Connecticut Sun, she drove toward the basket and absorbed contact from a Sun defender that knocked her off her line. Before she could recover, a second Sun player grabbed her arm. 2 fouls. And same possession, same sequence. Thomas comes up with it. No call. Both ignored. Clark turned to face the nearest official with a fury in her expression that had clearly been building across multiple games and multiple similar moments. This time, she did not hold back what she was thinking. She said it directly, loudly, in language that lip readers captured and broadcast audiences discussed for days afterward. She had reached the point where the gap between what the game was permitting and what the rulebook said should be permitted had become too wide to absorb quietly. The technical foul she received for expressing that opinion added to a running total that told its own story about how her frustration was being managed by the league compared to how the contact generating that frustration was being managed. The moment on August 18th, 2024 against the Seattle Storm was brief and physical in the most uncomplicated way. Clark missed a shot. She came down from her follow-through, and her hand made contact with the padded backboard support beside the basket. Technical foul, unsportsmanlike. The officials called it immediately. One swing of frustration against a padded surface, directed at nothing and no one, produced an instant whistle. It was the kind of call that provoked a reaction not just from Clark, but from fans who had spent months watching contact delivered directly to her body go unaddressed. The contrast was not subtle. Physical aggression directed at Caitlyn Clark by opponents repeatedly had been permitted as part of the game. Caitlyn Clark expressing frustration at an inanimate object had produced an immediate response from the officials. The math of that disparity was not lost on anyone paying attention. What happened on May 30th, 2024, in another game against the Seattle Storm, felt to many people watching like the moment where the accumulated weight of everything Clark had been absorbing finally became impossible to frame as anything other than deliberate. She had just hit a three-pointer, the kind of shot she makes so routinely that her teammates were already jogging back on defense before the ball cleared the net. Clark turned to follow them, moving at a jog, her back partially turned, when Victoria Vivians delivered a forearm directly into Clark's chest. Clark takes the hit, late. Not in a contested rebound situation, not fighting for position. After a made basket, while Clark was transitioning to defense, the force of the contact was enough to stop her movement and draw an audible reaction from the crowd. This time, something else happened that hadn't always been available to Clark in her most difficult moments during the season. Her teammates came. They didn't wait to see what officials would do. They moved toward the situation immediately, putting themselves between Clark and the Storm players, making visible what they thought about what had just happened. It was one of the first times all season that Clark didn't have to stand alone in one of those moments. The look on her face when her teammates surrounded her said something that no camera angle could fully capture.